Second book of Samuel, reading about David. It said, David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000. He and all his men went to Baalah in Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim on the ark. Say, God likes to be enthroned. Now, they set the ark of God on a new cart, and they brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. So Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the ark of God on it, and the Ai was walking in front of it. So David and all the house of Israel were celebrating with all their might. Somebody say celebrating. Celebrating with all their might. All their might. Before the Lord with castanets and harps and lyres and timbrels and sistrums and cymbals. They was having a party. That's right. Y'all got this picture? David and all of these men, they're going down the road. They've got the ark. Problem is that they put the ark on a new cart. We're going to talk about that new cart in a minute. But they put the ark on a new cart. And they're going down the road, and they're having a party. Because the ark is coming back to Jerusalem. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, somebody say Nacon's threshing floor. Uzzah reached out his hand and took hold of the ark of God because the oxen stumbled. So the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of the irreverent act, and therefore God struck him down, and he died there beside the ark of God. This is kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Then David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah, and to this day that place is called Perez Uzzah. David had one desire, which was to bring the ark of God back to Jerusalem. David is desirous to bring back the ark of God to Jerusalem. It's an interesting thing about the ark. You'll remember that the ark of God was first came on the scene back with Moses, where God had told Moses to build me an ark. And the ark was just a box. It was just a box. But this box was inlaid and overlaid with gold. But what made the ark significant was what was inside of the ark. You'll remember that God told Moses, now this is what I want you to put inside the ark. I want you to put the tablets of the commandments. Y'all remember the 10 commandments. Moses had written them on stone, put them in the ark. Then there was a question about God's leadership. And God had instructed Moses, said, well, I'll tell you what, have every man bring a rod, and whoever's rods buds, that's who God has chosen to lead. And Aaron's rod budded. Aaron's rod ended up going in the ark. Then you'll remember that when the children of Israel were journeying through the wilderness, that God fed them with manna. God said, Moses, pick up a handful of manna, put it in a jar, take the jar, put the jar in the ark. So there's 3 things in the ark. There is the table of commandments, Aaron's rod that budded, and the hidden manna. God's will, God's power, God's preservation. That's what the tablets, the rod, and the manna represent. And they're all put in the ark. So the ark represents the presence of God in the midst of his people. Everybody with me so far? Now, something happened, though, in 1 Samuel, because the ark of God had been captured by the Philistines because Eli and his sons failed to minister before the Lord in the proper manner. So Samuel was born. Y'all remember Samuel? Samuel was born, and God gave Samuel a word for Eli. He said that God's going to remove the priesthood from your house. And so the Philistines had come up to battle, and the ark of God was captured. The Philistines took the ark of God, and for 70 years, Israel was without the ark of God. Y'all got the picture. David now becomes anointed king. And the one thing David wants to do is David wants to bring the ark back to Jerusalem because David understands the necessity of the presence of God in the midst of his people. God's people had been without his presence for 70 years, but they still functioned as his people. Y'all with me? So in 2 Samuel chapter 6, David gathers up the people, and they go to bring the ark. David just wants the presence of God. Anybody hungry for the presence of God? So what does David do? David gathers up the chief men. They go, they get the ark. And as I mentioned earlier, they put the ark on a new cart. Problem number one. A new cart. Now, I believe that there's a lot of things that God is doing new. I believe that God is doing a new thing. But when it comes to the presence of God, we cannot use new carts. Now, what does this new cart represent? And why did God have an issue with this cart? God had commanded the priest to carry the ark. In Exodus chapter 25, if you're taking notes, you can write some of these verses down. But in Exodus chapter 25, verses 12 through 15, the ark was designed to be carried. Somebody say, the ark was designed to be carried. He said, when you make the ark, I want you to put these little rings on the ark, and I want you to make these staffs, and I want you to slide these beams through the ark, and then I want the priest to pick up the ark and carry it on their shoulders. So the priests were to carry the ark. The priests were to carry the presence. Somebody say, I'm a priest. I'm supposed to carry the presence. But when David went to get the ark, they put the ark on a new cart. Now, the problem with the new cart is, number one, that's not how God said to carry the ark. But what's wrong with putting the ark on the cart? God didn't want anything mechanical about this carrying of the presence. He didn't want anything mechanical about carrying the presence. He wanted the priest to carry that burden, and he's not trying to hide their humanity while they're carrying the presence. So that the presence is in the ark, which represents my presence, but I need priests, human people with faults, with frailties, but I want them to carry that presence. They put the ark on a cart. They're going down the road, and they get the naked threshing floor. Now, anybody know about threshing floors? Threshing floors were used to separate something called wheat from chaff. So when they would go out and they would gather up the wheat, they would take it down to a threshing floor, and they would beat it so that they could separate the wheat from the chaff. And that is called a threshing floor. They just beat it because they had to get all of the chaff away from the wheat. Because the only thing that's good is wheat. Only thing good is wheat. So they get the naked threshing floor with this ark on this new cart. Now, no, let me back up here. There's something about this that's interesting because David had good intentions. Anybody believe David had good intentions? David's intentions were good. I want the ark. I want the ark. I want the presence of God. I want that thing that represents God to be present in the midst of his people. So he had all the right intentions. He just did it the wrong way. So they get to this threshing floor, and that cart starts to wobble. And Nachan reaches up and he touches the ark. Bad move. Bad move. And God struck him. David, it said, got scared. Now look at verse 12. King David, or let's back up to verse 9. Because it says, when this thing happened, David was afraid of the Lord that day. And he said, how can the ark of the Lord ever come to me? Did you ever find yourself praying? Now, I know this is probably just me. But you ever just find yourself praying, how can I get more of God? I'm not satisfied with my experience in God. Anybody other than me ever pray that? I want more God. I mean, I'm thankful for the presence that I have, but I want more. You know, there is more to God to be had. You can have as much of God as you are open for. You can go deeper in God. Go to different levels in God. God can show you different aspects of himself. I want to know him more. David. How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me? He was not willing to take the ark, I'm in verse 10, of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. So instead he took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Now watch this. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite for 3 months. How many months are in a year? How many seasons? How many months in a season? How long was the ark at Obed-Edom's house? So we could say that the ark was at Obed-Edom's house for a season. For a season. For 3 months. But notice the Lord blessed him and his entire household. As long as the ark was present in Obed-Edom's house, the Lord blessed Obed-Edom's household. The blessing of the Lord is connected to the presence of the Lord. Look at somebody next to you and say, if you want the blessing, you got to keep pressing. You got to keep pressing on. You got to keep on. Pressing on. You got to keep. Oh, let me get back to this. Because there is a blessing of the Lord, and it's connected to the ark. And even during those times when we've done the right thing, but we don't get the outcomes that we want, we have to rest for a season. And in that season, David did something very interesting. During that season that the ark was in Obed-Edom's house, what David was doing, David went back and David searched the scriptures to try to figure out where did I go wrong. Y'all with me? Says something's not right here. The ark